Welcome back. We're staying in the Middle East. Israel says the next stage in its mission to eradicate Hamas has now begun. Fighting continues in the north of the Strip, with many continuing to move south. Residents in part of southern Gaza, however, around Khan Yunis, which was meant to be a safe area from the north, have now been told to move. It all comes as tensions in the West Bank continue to rise, with reports of fighting taking place in Jenin. Joining me now is Mark Regev, Senior Advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Israeli Ambassador to the UK. Mark Regev, thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to start with Khan Yunis and the IDF dropping leaflets over this area south of Gaza. It is the same area where the IDF ordered Gazans in the north to flee last month. We know that 2/3 of Gaza's population of 2.3 million people has been made homeless by the war. Every available space, we're told, in Khan Yunis and the south is being taken up. It's very, very crammed. Are you concerned about where these people who are receiving these leaflets dropping on them now, where they go?
Yes, we've actually said in the leaflets the areas where they should go to, the sort of areas where we know we don't expect there to be heavy fighting. Obviously, Hamas has a presence throughout the Gaza Strip, and we can't give them immunity anywhere, and we will pursue them. And at the same time, in parallel to our campaign against Hamas, we will do our utmost to safeguard the civilian population. And in those leaflets and in the other messages, we've been specific for where they should go, the sort of areas we know that will be out of the fighting.
Where are those areas?
So they are to the west of Khan Yunis. They are specified in the documents, the humanitarian areas. They will be safer there. But you have to know that just as Hamas had an infrastructure under the city of Gaza, a very formidable military structure, Khan Yunis has also, unfortunately, become a place where Hamas has been in government for 16 years, where they control and they have a military network that has to be taken on. So we're asking civilians, please get out of harm's way. We don't want to see you caught up in the crossfire between the Israeli Defense Forces and the Hamas terrorists.
What would you say to those Gazans receiving these leaflets and seeing what happened to their northern counterparts, the Gazans who were in the north, who fled to the south and then found themselves bombed whilst they were on the roads fleeing south? How can they know? I mean, you've just said, in fact, that you can't give them immunity anywhere. So
I said we can't give Hamas immunity anywhere. Of course, we're not talking about the civilian population. That's not related.
But it seems that you can't guarantee the civilian population safety anywhere either, because if they go to the west, they could find themselves underneath the same airstrikes that killed people who were on the road south fleeing.
So my understanding is the people who shot people who were fleeing was actually Hamas. I know that, of course, they blamed it on the IDF, but no, it was not us. We do not attack civilians, especially civilians who were fleeing to the south. Our whole goal was to have civilians flee to the south to get out of the fighting around Gaza City.
OK, we certainly at Sky, we can't verify that. We're not able to get in, of course, unless we're on an embed with the Israeli Defense Forces. So we certainly can't verify that. And the Palestinian reporters we've obviously heard from have been saying the exact opposite. So
no, but can I just take up that point? Palestinian journalists working in Gaza may be honourable people, yes, but they are working in the framework of a very violent, authoritarian and repressive Hamas regime. And the idea that they can report anything that does not conform with the Hamas party line is, of course, an illusion. You know this. You've reported in countries which have been non-democratic. You know the limitations. That applies equally in Hamas's controlled Gaza.
Yeah, absolutely. As independent journalists here at Sky News, we would say that I'm afraid we can't verify any of this. Let's move on from that. We can't verify what you're saying. We certainly can't verify that the Palestinian journalists, as you say, honourable people, courageous people who are staying in their country are under the influence of Hamas themselves. I wanted to just look at the wording of these leaflets. As I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they say something along the lines of, for your safety, you need to evacuate your places of residence immediately and head to known shelters. Now, we know from reporters on the ground, and we know from humanitarian agencies on the ground as well, that there are no shelters in Gaza. So, I mean, with that in mind, the wording of this leaflet seems very cynical.
I disagree. I think the people of Gaza who will read those leaflets know exactly what to do. And the same cynicism was expressed when we leafleted the north, and yet the overwhelming majority of the population heeded our advice and did leave areas of combat and did move south, and therefore was saved from being caught up in the crossfire between Israel and Hamas. And I believe you'll see the same thing now. Of course.
Okay, so they moved, let's say they did eventually, a lot of them move, as you say, south. If we had a map up a little bit ago of where they'd moved to. So they moved from the north and from Gaza City down to the south, in fact, to Khan Yunis, which is sort of shown in red, and to places like Rafah. Now those places are becoming unsafe. But of course, the Gazans aren't able to move north anymore. So this whole population of this strip, I don't really understand how the IDF feels that it can fit into this very tiny western area of Khan Yunis. So I'm imagining, I'm really sorry because I don't know if you can see this map on the screen yourself, but sort of to the west of the road
Correct.
that runs all the way down. How on earth can the whole population fit in there, and where else can they go if they can't?
Well, first of all, we want to see them move exactly as you've said, to the west there along the coast, because then, number one, they'll be close to the Rafah crossing, and so they can get the supplies that they need. As you know, the trucks are coming in daily, and we're increasing the number. The international community's got an effort there, bringing in water, food, and medicine. And at the same time, the French have talked about bringing a hospital ship, and there can be others who'll do the same, and the establishment of field hospitals. So the idea is to create a humanitarian safe zone there, closer to the coast. If you ask me, is it a perfect solution? It's not a perfect solution, because we're in a war, and a dreadful war that Israel didn't want, of course. But at the same time, it's about managing risk. And people will be safer, without doubt, if they heed the advice of the Israeli military and move out of a combat zone. You saw what happened to the city of Gaza. Khan Yunis is a center for Hamas activity as well. We're asking civilians, please vacate the area for your own safety. We don't want to see you caught up in the crossfire.
Okay, so let's assume they do start moving. So that is even more people, more than two-thirds already displaced, even more people displaced. The humanitarian situation that you mentioned there at Rafah is dire. It's beyond dire. From every single humanitarian agency we have heard about, it is, I don't think there are really words to describe what's going on. 500 trucks came in, aid trucks used to come in normal times to Gaza. I mean, nowhere near that amount. We're talking sort of tens are coming in at the moment.
No. We're past 100. We're past 100 trucks a day,
situation?
and we're hopeful to get to 200 trucks.
Sorry, say that again.
I said we're up to over 100 trucks a day, and we're hopeful we can get in the next couple of days even double that.
Okay, so still less than half of what normally came in when
Correct,
people still had
but we are in a war
homes.
situation, and in war things are much more difficult, and the most important thing here is to save life.
But that's the exact opposite.
Asking people to leave,
you need 500
hopefully
trucks coming in, and you have, less than half of that. And
but that's in peacetime. We are in war. We are in war, and what we're trying to do is save life. Now, if you want to pretend there's no war, of course there's a war.
No, but your statement there doesn't make sense. You're in a war and you're trying to save life, but you're absolutely not trying to save life if you're not allowing life-saving aid to come in. We
are. I just said we're up to 100 trucks a day, and we hope that will double in the next couple of days.
Which doesn't save life.
Yes, it does. If we bring in water, food, medicine, other support for the innocent population, of course that's saving life.
Fuel?
Fuel, there's a decision taken today to allow fuel to come in, specifically fuel for hospital generators and so forth. But I want to be very, very clear here. If we find evidence that Hamas continues to steal fuel, as they have done in the past, and divert it to their war machine and to their tunnels and to their missiles, so that fuel will be in jeopardy. But as you know, as of this week, fuel is coming in.
Okay, let's talk about northern Gaza, because I think it was the other day you told us here at Sky News that 1 million had left northern Gaza. That left around 200,000 people in your estimate there. That makes you the occupying force in that region. Does that also now give you the obligation to put in a large humanitarian operation in northern Gaza?
We will coordinate with the humanitarian organizations to make sure that the people of northern Gaza receive the supplies that they need. Obviously, we have no intention whatsoever to see the civilian population suffer. They've suffered enough in this war. We understand that.
What have you done so far in terms of that?
I think we're talking about, we're just now, the military operations are still ongoing in the north. It's not like it's over. I wish it was already, but you can't talk about a Marshall Plan before you first do D-Day, correct? We've got to make sure we have security in the area, and then, of course, we can do a major effort. I do understand, though, that Israel has been talking to the UN and other humanitarian organizations to already start bringing support to the north.
OK. Your boss, Netanyahu, said earlier that we're trying to minimise civilian casualties, but, and I quote here, unfortunately, we're not successful. I wonder what you made of the tone in which he said it. I mean, are we to believe that Israel, you know, one of the most powerful militaries in the world, with some of what it says is the best intelligence in the world, bolstered by more than $3.8 billion a year of military aid from the US, are we to believe that that military cannot take out Hamas without killing well over 11,000 civilians in a country of 2.3 million, in a country that is smaller than, forgive the British reference, but the Isle of Wight?
Bill, with respect, there's no evidence whatsoever that we've killed 11,000 civilians. That's what Hamas is telling you. To say that every first of all, that number is a Hamas number.
Hamas figures.
No, but you've made a double. Sorry, Bill, you've made a mistake. You have made a mistake, Bill. No, Bill, you've made a mistake. You said 11,000 civilians. There's no evidence.
Humanitarian agencies who operate in the region and who have done for years, for decades, those figures do tend, in the fullness of time, to be correct.
You are incorrect, and let me explain why. Please let me finish my sentence, Bill. 11,000 is the Hamas figure, and they have a propaganda interest to exaggerate. But more serious, as you said, 11,000 civilians. That means all the casualties in Gaza. We haven't hit a single Hamas terrorist. That's obviously illogical. Obviously illogical. To say 11,000 civilians have been killed is blatantly and obviously incorrect. And you are repeating Hamas propaganda. That is simply not true.
It's 11,200, I believe, they now say. And as I say,
they say civilians. They say, who says 11,000 civilians besides Hamas? Please tell me.
They
don't say civilians. No, they don't say civilians.
It's the Gaza Health Ministry that has given out the number of 11,200 thus far of Palestinians.
Yes, but that's the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health in Gaza.
Of those, it's more than 4,000 children. And
okay, that's once again, that's Hamas's numbers.
Independent journalists talk to the humanitarian agencies that operate in that region. They confirm that in past conflicts, the numbers given out by the Gaza Health Ministry do, in the end, tend to be, broadly speaking,
but they don't at all relate to combatants. That means terrorists and civilians. To say 11,000 civilians have been killed is blatantly wrong.
Just very quickly, I want to ask you about the West Bank. There are reports overnight of strikes on hospitals in Jenin's, deaths there as a result of those. Is Hamas thought now to be in the West Bank? Is that why those hospitals are being targeted?
No, unfortunately, you have Hamas cells across the West Bank. You can just ask the Fatah people, they will agree with that assessment. And they are interested in creating a crisis also on the West Bank, in causing the sort of violence that we saw on the Israeli-Gaza border on October 7th. And as a result, we have been preempting. We've been arresting people. We've been taking them out. The idea is to avoid an escalation by nipping this in the bud. That's exactly what we're doing. I'm sure British forces would do the same in a similar situation.
OK. All right. Mark, Regev, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Bill.
You're watching Sky News Today. Coming up. The former Home Secretary says ministers should disregard human rights laws and obligations in their entirety to push the government's Rwanda plan through. I'll be joined by the barrister, Adam Wagner.
That has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, and it's evident that the boat is seriously overcrowded. This is one of the most severe viruses in the world. I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
This is going to be the biggest party Tripoli has ever seen.
That's it. It got us then. There's a lot of action going on. A lot of hits coming in still. We aim to be the best and the most trusted place in news.
Clearly not had very much to eat at all. A lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at her arms. I can put my entire hand round.
This is the cocktail of drugs which the doctors at this hospital have been giving their coronavirus patients. Made for people who want clarity in an uncertain world.
Mother Nature can be vicious, absolutely savage. The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake.
Oh! Close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
The 5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.